Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial is on how to draft corsets with sleeve. If you're interested in learning this, please keep watching this video. So guys, as you can see, I have already drafted out my basic bodice pattern. If you don't know how to draft the basic bodice, I'll be leaving a link in my description box. Do well to watch the video before proceeding with this. So on my shoulder line, I have a length of 7.5 inches, which is 15 inches divided by 2 is 7.5 inches. And I went down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. So my new shoulder length is 4 inches. I'll be dividing that 4 inches by 2, which is 2 inches. And I'll make a line from there to where I have my bust line. When I'm done with that, I'll move over to my under bust line and mark half an inch on both sides of my dart legs. Now I'll be connecting that point straight to where I have my hip line. Just go ahead and do the same thing for your pattern. Now I'll go over to my chest line and mark half an inch upwards. Now you can decide to leave yours at the chest line, or you can go up by half of an inch, or you go up by 1 inch, but I decided to go up by half of an inch and then made a line straight to my armhole. So after that, I'm going to use my French curve to connect my under bust line to the 1 inch below my bust line. And now for my dart intake, I have 1.5 inches, so I'll be marking half an inch to the side going towards the center and 1 inch to the side going towards my armhole. Now I'll be using my ruler to connect that point to my bust line. And after that, I'll also add 1/4 of an inch on both sides. This is just to make sure that my corset cup is not loose on my chest line. I want my corset cup to sit perfectly on my chest line, so I added 1/4 of an inch on both sides of that line and connected it to the bust line. So I'll be using my French curve to make a little curve on the bust line because I don't want to have any sharp edge around that part. So the next thing I will do now is to create a space between my corset cups. So by that, I'll be going in by half of an inch, but before drawing out my corset cups, I'll be confirming the length I have from my bust line to my chest line. And on the side, I have 4.5 inches, but on the side going towards the center, I have 4 inches. So I'll be adding half of an inch to that to make 4.5 inches on both sides. When I'm done adding half of an inch, I'm going to use my French curve to connect the half of an inch I marked inwards to the length I have on my chest line. And also do the same for the other side. I'm going to be connecting that point to where I have my armhole. So guys, when I was drafting out my basic bodice pattern, I divided my bust circumference by 4 and marked it on my chest line. So I'll be dividing what I have from my armhole length to the point I marked as my bust circumference divided by 4. And then I'll proceed to make my corset cups. So I'll be connecting my under bust line to my chest line using my French curve, and also connecting my chest line on the other side to my under bust line using my French curve. So guys, if you followed the drafting to this stage, don't worry, you're almost done. Just keep watching the video. So after that, I'm going to divide my bust circumference by 4 and mark, which is 9.5 inches. And for my dart intake, I have 2 inches and then marked 1.5 inches as my sewing allowance on the chest line. And on the waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 4 and added 1.5 inches as my dart intake and added 1.5 inches as my sewing allowance. And on my hip line, I divided my hip circumference by 4, which is 10.5 inches, and added 1.5 inches as my dart intake and added 1.5 inches as my sewing allowance. Now I'll be connecting the last 3 dots together using my ruler. So guys, I'm done drafting and I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern. So guys, when you're done cutting, you will have your pattern looking like this, and it's now time to make the back's effect on the front pattern. I'll go ahead and use my transparent tape to join both sides together. This is just to make sure I have one piece as my front pattern. So you don't have to rush your work, just take your time and make sure that you get it right. So now I'm done joining the both pieces together, and I'll be marking 2 inches below my waistline. This is totally optional. You can decide to leave yours at the waistline, but I just decided to go down by 2 inches because I want it to look more like a blouse and not a crop top. So now on the hip line, I went up by 1/2 inch and connected it to the 2 inches I marked below my waistline using my French curve. You can mark this straight to your waistline instead of the 2 inches below your waistline. If you want yours to look exactly like this, you will mark the 1/2 inch above your hip line straight to the waistline instead of the 2 inches below the waistline. Now it's time to make the back pattern. The back pattern is quite simple. You just place your front pattern on a clean sheet and then trace out the sides. You can decide to make loops at the center back, or you can also use a zipper. So for this tutorial, I'll be using a zipper for my corset blouse, but for the next corset tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make loops at your back pattern. But for a beginner, I will advise you learn how to make your corset first and just stick to your zipper, and then gradually, when you learn how to make your corsets perfectly, you can now start making loops and adding other things to your corsets. So now I'm done tracing and also making my back neckline. So now I'll be going down by 2 inches from the waistline, just exactly what I did with my front pattern. I decided to fold in the front pattern and then mark 2 inches after my waistline. So I'm done marking the 2 inches after my waistline on my back pattern, and now I'm just going to cut out my back pattern. So guys, I am done drafting and cutting out my corset pattern, and now I'm just going to cut this on my fabric. So while cutting, I added 1/2 inch all around my pattern except the center front and the center back, and also the sides, because I added 1.5 inches as my sewing allowance. And on my next video, I'll be showing you guys how to sew a corset blouse with sleeve and a back waistline. So guys, thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I hope this video was helpful, and please make sure to subscribe and also like and drop a comment in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye.